right, Riley Gaines is a 12-time All-American and SEC champion. I just found out she swam from Alcatraz, by the way, to San Francisco. That's something, if you ever lose me, you will never find me there, but just telling you. She was competing, of course, for the University of Kentucky. Riley gained national attention for her vocal stance protecting female athletes and women's sports.
Yep. So, you folks hear me talk on the radio about people needing to be bold. This is a woman who is bold. Jim Valvano, the great basketball coach, says every day ordinary people do extraordinary things. Now, when you swim Division I for Kentucky, you're already an extraordinary person. But she was thrown into this spotlight, and she embraced it and really has become a champion for women's, our daughters, my nieces. Thank God for Riley Gaines. And with that, give her a big applause and welcome her to the stage.
Let's go, girls.
Well, thank you guys. I hope you heard that song, by the way. It was Man, I Feel Like a Woman. So that's pretty good. What a blessing it is to be here with you all. I found myself in the state of California several times over the past few years, especially leading up to November 5th last year. Of course, I can recount not too long ago being in San Francisco, which was my first mistake, going to San Francisco. But it's been a mission of mine these past few years to get on campuses, college campuses, high school campuses, and encourage and engage with and mobilize the youth. I think it's a demographic that's often left out of these important deemed political conversations. And so I went to San Francisco State University to deliver a message similar-ish, I guess, to what you'll hear today, and in a similar format. It was a classroom, so, a podium at the front, seats out in the audience, a whiteboard behind me, doors in the back. And upon delivering this message, a group of protesters rush in, hundreds of them, and they turn off the lights to the room, and they ambush me. Fully accosted, I'm being pushed, I'm being shoved, I'm being punched in the face by these men wearing dresses, which, fortunately for me, their punches don't hurt that bad. But nonetheless, these protesters ended up holding me for ransom for about 4, almost 5 hours, demanding that if I wanted to make it back home to Tennessee to see my family safely again, I had to pay them money. Might be wondering, where were the police? We were in San Francisco, so the police were being held for ransom with me. Hour 3 in this room, hour 4 in this room, I'm looking at the officers, can't you do something? Actually, isn't it your job to do something? To which verbatim they said, no. No, we can't do anything. We're not allowed to do anything because we're not allowed to be seen as anything other than an ally to that community. Again, the same community who's on the other side of these doors, calling these officers racist pigs for protecting a white girl like me. Anyways, the dean of students ends up showing up. Again, bear in mind, it's like the middle of the night, about midnight at this point. And he starts negotiating with the students how much I owe each of them to be able to leave, which the price they ultimately agreed upon was $10 each, which makes me mad because I think I'm worth more than $10. Anyways, we were eventually able to get out of this room, not because the protesters dispersed, but about 40 or so officers formed a diamond around me. We ended up pushing out. But the most remarkable part about this specific incident is what happened the next day when the vice president of student affairs at the university sent out a university-wide email. So to all faculty, all staff, all professors, the entire student body. And in this email, she said, "We are so proud of our brave students for handling Riley Gaines in the manner that they did. We know how deeply traumatic her presence is on this campus, and so here's some counseling resources for you all. Take the day off of school. Just know that we see you, we hear you, we love you, and we stand with you. Nowhere in this email did it condemn violence against women for that matter. Nowhere in this email did it say, we uphold and understand the value of our First Amendment rights, of free speech. No, of course not. So I figured I'll go back this week with Charlie Kirk. Anyways, I could describe truthfully hundreds of similar scenarios. Again, all for merely saying men and women are different, for saying that there are two sexes, for saying that you cannot change your sex and that each sex is deserving of equal opportunity, of privacy in areas of undressing, of safety in their sport and beyond. I've been spit on. I've had drinks poured on me. I've had glass bottles thrown at me. Of course, the most profane, obscene, heinous things you could possibly imagine hurled my way. I could describe hundreds of those experiences. So when I say I'm grateful to be in this room with you guys, yeah. Please know I mean that from the very, very bottom of my heart. Look, I'm not here to deliver a political speech, if you will. If you thought that's what you were going to get, you came to the wrong place, at least for me. Although I will say, these past, 104-ish days or so, my pillows felt a little bit better at night. The air feels a little bit clearer. It really has been win after win after win with Donald Trump back in the White House. Of course, this comes off the heels of President Trump signing an executive order declaring that men will no longer be allowed to participate in women's sports within any educational program that receives federal funds. It was one of the most amazing things because I got to be there and stand beside the president as he signed this EO. And I'm sure some of you saw the clips or the visuals that surfaced following this signing. So powerful, really. All these little girls, I'm talking 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, they surrounded him as he signed this, and they're in their jerseys or their uniforms, and they've got their big bows in their hair that they wear on the soccer field. That visual means more to me than I could possibly put into words. Of course, day one in office, Donald Trump signed an executive order declaring there are only two sexes, male and female. Every time I've been able to engage in this conversation with those who oppose this, those who vehemently oppose this, of course, my first question is, okay, then how many are there? Is there a finite number? And my second question is, okay, then what are they? To which they are never able to provide an adequate answer. One more personal one, actually, that I can mention that my family has been able to benefit from, again, since Donald Trump assumed his role as president back in January. I'm so grateful to have my husband here with me today. Yeah. He's the really cute 6'4" British guy who now living in Nashville has like this awesome country British accent. It's the best. He came over to the United States in 2018. He was an athlete at the University of Kentucky as well. That's where we met. We started dating. We got married at the end of my senior year. So this month, actually, it will be 3 years of marriage. But of course, when you marry an alien, which is what I call him all the time, of course you have to go through the immigration process. This was no shock to us. We have an immigration lawyer. He tells us, look, you'll apply for your green card. It'll take 6 months. No big deal. We wait 6 months. We wait a year. We wait a year and a half. We wait 2 years. We wait 2.5 years. We'd heard nothing. Crickets from USCIS or immigration services. And so that's when we began to inquire, poke around. Bear in mind, he was here legally the entire time, right? Even in this process of waiting. And so we're reaching out to every agency, every department. No one could point us in the right direction. Until finally, we get this letter to our house And in big bold letters, it says request for evidence. We open the letter. It says, sorry, we can't give you your green card because your medical record isn't complete. And what was missing from my husband's medical record in the year 2025? Yeah, the ineffective, under-researched COVID vaccine. They were holding it over his head, essentially like a carrot, saying, unless you get this, we won't give you this. But I'm so grateful, number one, that Donald Trump won, and number two, that my husband was just unwilling to compromise on his health in that way. And so we held out. January 20th rolls around, Donald Trump is sworn in. Give it 24 hours before I pick up the phone. Hey, did you know this mandate that I would deem illegal is still in place nationwide? He said, no, give me 2 hours. And literally within 2 hours. It wasn't like a phone call, it wasn't a text. I saw a headline that said, President Trump vacates nationwide mandate requiring legal immigrants to get the COVID vaccine. So really not long before we came here, got this little green card in the mail. Don't know why, I didn't think it's actually a green card. Spoiler alert, it's literally a green card. So I figured, we'll have fun with this. I'd made a TikTok about this previously, and you would just be aghast at the amount of liberals, leftists, who were suddenly in favor of mass deportations when they thought my husband was in this country illegally. We were getting reports of how many times he had been reported for being an illegal, and I had been reported for harboring an illegal. There was a local news station in North Carolina that had reported that Tom Homan had raided our house and he was actually on a flight out of the country. Amazing. Who believes this stuff? Anyways, I figured we'd have fun with this. So I went to Publix. Do you guys have Publix? It's like a grocery store. What's your grocery store here? I heard Walmart. CVS? What did you say? You guys are missing out. I went to Publix. They have a bakery in the back, okay? And I went to the cake decorator and I said, look, can you make a cake? And can you write on there, congrats on not getting deported? And the cake decorator is so stunned. He's looking at me. He's like, I don't really know. I need to go talk to my boss in the back. And he goes to the back and he comes back and he's like, I can do it. He forgot the R in congrats. But nonetheless, all of that to say, not tired of the wins yet. Yeah. Look, I won't waste too much of your time sharing the specifics of how I have found myself here, because truthfully, I could speak about it for hours. I'll just give you a little brief background. Started swimming when I was 4, graduated when I was 22, dedicated 18 years of my life to my sport, which probably don't have to explain this to many of you, right? Those of you who are parents of athletes, those of you who are athletes, I see some young people who are athletes yourselves, those of you who are former athletes, you get it. You understand the time, the hours, the dedication, the sacrifices that you have to make to compete at and ultimately be successful at the highest level. I was no different. Started getting recruited. Truth be told, I could have gone anywhere in the nation that I wanted to go to pursue my athletic career, which I'm biased. I'm sorry, the SEC is in fact the best conference. I knew I was going to stay in the SEC. I come from a family of SEC athletes. My dad, he's an SEC Hall of Famer. He played football. My mom played softball. My oldest sister went to Ole Miss. She played softball. My brother's in college. He plays football now. My youngest sister, she's 16. She is an elite level gymnast. And dare I say, which I would never tell her this, the best athlete out of all of us. She will go on to do incredible things. So ended up taking a trip to University of Kentucky, and I fell in love. Committed there on a whim. Best decision I could have made. Very proudly finished my career there as a 12-time NCAA All-American, 5-time SEC champion, SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time. two-time Olympic trial qualifier, SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year, SEC Community Service Leader of the Year. The list goes on, but again, just to reiterate, it's a lifelong journey. Flash forward here to my junior year. Ended up concluding my junior season placing 7th in the nation, which I was proud of. To be top 8, you're an All-American, it's a pretty high honor, but didn't go my best time. I knew I was capable of more. And so it was really right then and there, placing 7th in the nation my junior year, that I set a goal for my senior year to win a national title, which would of course mean becoming the fastest woman in the country in my respective event. And so, you're clapping prematurely. You know how this story ends. Senior year rolls around, and I'm right on pace to achieve this goal. Until about midway through my senior season, ranked 3rd in the nation in the 200 freestyle, trailing the girl in 2nd, a girl I knew very well by a few 100ths of a second. Our sport is measured in very small margin, again, hundredths of a second. But the swimmer who was leading the nation, by body lengths, might I add, was a swimmer that none of us had ever heard of before. And that was the first time we became aware of a swimmer named Lia Thomas. Lots of red flags at the time. Keep in mind, I hadn't seen a photo of this person, or else things definitely would have been a little more clear. For all I knew at the time, this was a senior from University of Pennsylvania, which is not a school that has ever historically produced that caliber of swimmer, leading the nation again by body lengths in events ranging from the 100 freestyle, which is a sprint, all the freestyle events in between through the mile, which is of course long distance. I mean, none of it made sense. I'm scratching my head, I'm talking to my coaches, who is this? We had no idea. And we continued to stay in the dark until an article came out disclosing that Lia Thomas is actually Will Thomas, and swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to switch to the women's team. And so when I read this, I was shocked. Of course, my whole team was shocked. But really, upon reading it, I felt relieved. I was like, oh, duh, that makes sense. He's a man. No way the NCAA will let him compete actually with the women when it matters. And to me at that point, it was NCAA championships. Now, that feeling of relief was only further solidified when I went to look up who Will Thomas was. Because I was curious, was this a lateral movement? Was this a man who went from ranking amongst the best of the men to now continuing to rank amongst the best of the women, as if that would make this any better anyways? And of course, that's not what I saw. I saw that this was a mediocre man. It's probably generous, actually. A less than average man competing in his rightful category at the Division I level, the men's category, ranking in the 400ths and 500ths nationally the year prior, to then just 12 months later dominating, not just number one, dominating the entire country of women. But again, kind of why I say I felt relieved. I believed the NCAA would see it how I saw it, and how my teammates saw it, and how my coaches saw it, and how my family saw it, and how anyone with any amount of brain activity would probably comprehend this. Nothing hateful about it, nothing even opinionated about it. Looking at the mere facts on the paper in front of us that this was not a lateral movement, but lo and behold, the NCAA did not see it that way. They saw absolutely nothing wrong with this. And so about 3 weeks before our national championships in March of 2022, they announced that Thomas's participation in the women's category was a non-negotiable, meaning there's nothing we could do. There were no questions that we could ask. There were no concerns that we could raise. As women, as female athletes, we were quite literally told we had to accept this with a smile on our face. And so I watched that first day. It was the 500 freestyle, which is not an event that I typically do. And so I watched on the side of the pool as Thomas swam to a national title, beating out Olympians, beating out American record holders. Keep in mind, these aren't scrubs. They're the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers this world has ever seen. And he beat them all by body lengths. He became the first man to win a Division I NCAA women's title. Trailblazer. Second day of competition was the 200 freestyle, which is the event that he and I raced each other in. And so, of course, we'd get on the blocks. We'd swim prelims that morning. Top 8 women come back for finals that evening. It's the top 8 women in the entire country. And I look over at the lane next to me, and what is very visibly a man is standing there. 6'4", his size 15 feet, taking up the entire block. Visible from his side profile is not only his Adam's apple, but to be pretty explicit here, and if we had to see it, you guys at least have to hear about it. The bulge in his women's swimsuit, diving off the block, swimming 8 laps of freestyle, touching the wall at the end, turning around, looking up at the scoreboard behind me, and realizing that we went the exact same time, meaning that we had tied down to the 100th of a second. Yeah, kind of embarrassing for a 6'4" man, isn't it? Couldn't even beat me. Anyways, we get out of the water, and we go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself, again, him towering over me, and this official says, "Great job, you two, but you tied, and we don't account for ties. We only have 1 trophy, so we're going to give that trophy to Leah. Sorry, Riley, you just don't get one." I was so taken aback in this moment. And let me reiterate, make it very, very clear. The tangible object meant nothing to me. It was never about the physical trophy itself. I'm a 12-time All-American. I have lots of those at home. Of course, it was the principle behind what was happening. And so I said, okay, but why? The dreaded question no one dared ask all season. And I said, why? Why are you adamant on giving the trophy to the man in the women's 200 free? To which he didn't have an answer. They didn't give him a script of what to say when someone asked the dreaded question of why. And so he looks at me, and I appreciate his honesty, I guess, and understand this is when his face changed, the official. He looked sad. He sounded sad. I could tell he didn't even believe what he was about to say, but he looked at me and he said, "Riley, I am so sorry, but we have been advised as an organization that when photos are being taken, it's crucial that the trophy is in Leah's hands. You can pose with this one, but you have to give yours back. Leah takes the trophy home. You go home empty-handed. End of story." And let me tell you what, that was the moment when, for me, we knew all season. We all did. All of my team. 99.9 of us female athletes, female swimmers on that pool deck knew this was unfair. We knew the locker room scene was wrong. We knew the silencing that we were facing from our universities. We knew all of that was wrong, but it wasn't until this official reduced everything we'd worked our entire lives for down to a photo op to validate the feelings and the identity of a man at the expense of our own. That's when I was just no longer willing to wait. And I say wait because that's what I was doing. I was waiting. I'm ashamed to say it. I was waiting for someone else to say something because I thought someone else would, right? I believed surely a coach would say something. Surely someone within the NCAA, someone with political power, some other swimmer, someone's dad, quite frankly, would come down there and yank this man out of our locker rooms like my dad so desperately wanted to do. I believed, like the rest of us, that those whose job it was to protect us would protect us. But it was in that moment, on that podium, sharing my placement with a man standing 8-9 inches taller than me, holding this trophy I knew I had to give back, when I just had this realization of, Riley, how in the world can you expect someone to stand up for you if you're not even willing to stand up for you? This has to come from you all as women, as female athletes. So again, that's the unfairness of it, which probably didn't have to explain. Kindergartners seem to understand it. We had a president previously who did not, but kindergartners do. But what you probably couldn't fully grasp is what that locker room was like. Maybe unless it's a situation you yourself, daughter, granddaughter, a loved one has been in, the feelings of violation when you turn around in this intimate space, right? Locker rooms in general aren't meant to be, they're not comfortable. But growing up a swimmer, you almost become comfortable being vulnerable, if you will, in that environment. I can't even tell you how that vulnerability is stripped from you. Again, when you turn around, totally unbeknownst to you, you weren't forewarned, by the way, that this would be the arrangement. You turn around and again, 6'4" man, 22 years old, taking off his women's swimsuit, fully naked, fully intact, fully exposing himself, inches away from where you were simultaneously fully unclothed. It's awkward, it's embarrassing, it's uncomfortable, it's humiliating. It was feelings of betrayal. That's how I felt. I felt betrayed by an institution that I loved, that I trusted, I believed had my best interests at heart, an institution that I dedicated my life to. And without even a blink of an eye, they threw our rights to privacy as women entirely out of the window. And I alluded to the silencing that we face as well. I believe that's an important part in showcasing how this issue, really basically of the cultural chaos that is plaguing this country, it's transcended beyond the subject matter, and it really has become an infringement on our First Amendment rights. I'm sure you guys have seen it in your daily lives. Again, I don't probably have to tell you, whether it was during COVID, whether it's surrounding this stuff, DEI training in your career or your workplace. I'm sure you guys have seen it. I had to go to sensitivity training. Didn't really work, but I had to go, where my university brought in an outside professional who sat me down, a 21-year-old senior in college at the time, and she taught me how to use she, her pronouns. I had to keep going through this training until verbatim they felt like I had been properly re-educated. We were forced to participate in restorative justice circles and learn about how we were the oppressors in this story, how Thomas was the victim, how he just wanted to be happy. That's what it was. We were the ones who were prohibiting his happiness by daring to even question what was happening. How they brought in other outside professionals who sat us down and said, girls, what it sounds like you're advocating for, especially in regard to the locker room, sounds a lot like segregation. And you know who else advocated for segregation in the 1960s and prior? The KKK. And is that the side of history that you want to be on? Akin to white supremacists and racists? No, I don't think so. So I suggest you be inclusive. Bringing in more outside professionals, which if you haven't caught on by now, they were all trained and brought through the LGBTQ Education Center on campus, who sat us down and said, girls, this rhetoric that you're using amongst yourselves, because again, we all oppose this, my entire team. I was the captain of 40 girls. 38 of us opposed it. The other 2 were dating each other. So that's that. Whatever. Doesn't matter. We all knew it to be wrong, and we talked about it freely and openly. There was varying levels of willingness to use the pronouns and different things, but we all recognized it for the most part to be unfair. This lady sat us down and said, girls, this rhetoric that you're using, understand someone somewhere could harm themselves because of it, and that would make you solely responsible for a potential death, and that would make you a murderer. And you don't want to be a murderer, do you? No, you don't want to have blood on your hands, so I suggest you be kind. That's what they told us. That's why so few were willing to put their name and their face to this, not because they agreed with it, not because they thought it was fair or righteous or just or moral by any means, but because they were terrified, and understandably so. They effectively muzzled us, telling 18, 19, 20-year-old girls they're going to be murderers and akin to the KKK. That works. Anyways, this issue, again, I could talk about it for hours. This issue, I believe, more broadly speaking, the gender ideology movement, of course, what we're seeing happening to children, both in the educational sense, in the educational realm, and of course, as it pertains to the medicalization side of things, where children are being chemically and surgically castrated for profit. Really let that sink in. It won't be long, I really believe this, it won't be long until we holistically look back as a society and accurately call that what it is, which is the biggest medical scandal this world has ever seen. But more specifically, I believe the issue of allowing men into women's sports was the sleeper issue of the election. While certainly I believe that people turned out to the polls to embrace Donald Trump, to embrace his cabinet picks, to embrace the America First agenda, more so, I believe that people turned out to the polls to reject absurdity. And that is what the Democratic Party has become. Absurd. Entirely and thoroughly absurd, from top to bottom. Whether it's men and women's sports, whether it's tampons in boys' bathrooms, whether it's men and women's prisons, which we've seen on full display just this past week in California, whether it's believing that men can get pregnant, whether it's referring to Latino individuals as Latinx, which Gavin Newsom swears up and down he's never done. They've lost the ability to communicate with your everyday common sense American who intuitively knows that men and women are different. They've proven themselves to be so out of touch with reality, the reality that, again, everyday Californians and Americans face. Whether that's flailing your arms on the Senate floor for 25 hours straight, filibustering nothing, by the way. Like, there was nothing to be filibustered. He was doing that, I think, literally for fun, maybe? I don't know. Saying nothing of substance. Whether it's flying to El Salvador, 3,000 miles to El Salvador, to fight to bring back a already once deported, alleged gang member, illegal criminal back into this country, while your own constituent loses her life and you say nothing. You don't call the family. You don't go to the funeral. You don't vote yes on the Laken Riley Act. They're pathetic, and they're morally bankrupt cowards, is what the Democratic Party has turned into. Anyways. So I guess I'll just, send a forceful message to you all. We cannot become complacent. I've mentioned all the wins, of course, that we've seen since Donald Trump has been back in the Oval Office. And I imagine I don't have to tell this room to not become complacent, because you live it. You live it every single day. It's very different. It's very different to what I see. Again, I live in Tennessee. We have a lot of you guys making your way on over. But you know what I find in talking to people who come from California? Number one, they call themselves refugees, by the way. Political refugees. Literally, their words, not mine. They say we can't do it anymore. We just couldn't stay. I have kids. And to a degree, I understand, right? It's almost an impossible situation you're left to decipher. What do you do? I have so much respect for those of you who stay and fight. I have so much respect for that. Because, again, if you don't, then who in the world will? But we cannot become complacent. It's almost inevitable, because success breeds complacency. But complacency breeds failure. It is the enemy to growth. It is the enemy to progress. And it's what the Democrats do really, really well. They're relentless. They never let up. It is pedal to the metal at all times. They don't allow themselves to be steamrolled. They don't just roll over, and it's admirable. I'll say it. Granted, I think it's easy to unite behind evil in the way that they do. When you have no conscience or morals, if you will, I think it's easy to do that. but I think we could take a page from their playbook. That's how they've acquired every inch of the public square. Think about it. Academia, entirely left-leaning. Even these at one point considered prestigious academic institutions like the Ivy Leagues, entirely left-leaning. What can only be described as activists have infiltrated into these educating positions. Corporate America, entirely left-leaning. We saw this week, or maybe last week, where Nike, a shoe company, like an athletic wear brand, Nike is funding research to study how they can disfigure young boys to make them physically comparable to young girls without significant retained male advantage. Nike is funding this child experimentation, this child abuse is what it is. Ask yourselves, why is Nike funding this? It's nice to see some of these corporations and businesses begin to roll back on some of their DEI initiatives and programs, but be wary. They're just going to repackage that as something else and continue to push it forward, something a little more palatable, rolls off the tongue a little easier. Healthcare, again, left-leaning. Hollywood, media, entertainment, all left-leaning. Even seemingly our spiritual leaders have been co-opted by the left. Did you see that service that President Trump got walked into? Day 1, day 2 in office. Bishop is a stretch, but this bishop, like any progressive pastor, was very quick to speak of God's grace. Admittedly, in listening to the clips I saw, there wasn't a whole lot I disagreed with. As a Christian myself, understanding that, of course, we have a God who loves everyone. That's never been in contention. That's never been a question. But what the bishop left out, what our culture tends to leave out, what the He Gets Us commercial at the Super Bowl, you see that one too? Right, it has these Christ-like figures washing the feet of sinners outside Planned Parenthoods and abortion clinics. Again, that's biblically accurate. But it leaves out what happens next in the story. I think of stories like 1 John, right? The adulterous woman, the woman who's sentenced to be stoned. Jesus appears, he says, those without sin cast the first stone. That's his perfect display of grace. That's what the bishop spoke of. But again, left out what happens next when he says, now go and sin no more. Leading with grace, but always landing with the truth. All of that to say they've acquired every inch of the public square. We could take a page from their playbook. This war on woke has not been won, even with Donald Trump back in the White House. Again, I mean, just based off what we've seen in California this week, what you guys see, I'm sure, on a daily basis, I don't have to tell you that. But it's not just California. Although, as I mentioned, we saw the prisons, I believe it's SB 132, who, Senator Scott Wiener, that guy sucks, by the way. That guy's the worst. Yeah, whatever. Who's advocating to keep these violent male sexual offenders in women's prisons. Who this week, again, voting down a bill that would criminalize, the human trafficking of children, of sex slavery of children, selling children off into prostitution. Totally legal for 16 and 17-year-olds here in this state. And Senator Scott Wiener posted on his socials, well, what's stopping, it's not so bad if an 18-year-old wants to pay $20 to a 17-year-old to fool around. That's literally what he posted on his social platforms. All of this, again, I don't typically get into the weeds on this stuff, but when you compare the two, the issue of men and women's sports, what we're seeing happening to children, and what we saw this week with decriminalizing, actually keeping it legal here in this state to do this to children, it's all an attempt to normalize pedophilia, and it's sick, is what it is. Anyways, we see it in Wisconsin, where Governor Evers, just 2 weeks ago, in their 1,000-page budget bill, which is how these things go, attempted to change the word mother in their state statute to inseminated persons. Like, we've been called it all as women. Cervix havers, uterus owners, menstruators, bleeders, chest feeders, birthing people, like the list goes on. Inseminated persons takes the cake. That's like what you referred to cattle as. Like there's not a whole lot more dehumanizing than inseminated persons. So the first thing that pops into my mind, of course, is, oh gosh, what are they going to call fathers? The counterpart would be like, inseminator, I don't know. No. Father was changed to natural parent. Now tell me more specifically there's not a war on women. Second question that pops into my mind, oh gosh, grandmas, grandmothers. You guessed it, grand inseminated persons. Don't forget to get your inseminated persons happy inseminated persons day card as inseminated persons day is coming up. Crazy. This war on woke has not been won. Good news and great news. The great news is that the eternal war has already been won. And that is the most reassuring, reaffirming thing you will hear today or any point in your life. And of course, the good news is that the worldly cultural war, it can be won. But that's where every single person in this room comes into play. Every single one of us has a circle of influence. I believed, again, naively, 3 years ago, that you had to have a social following of millions of followers before you had any credibility, before you could make any impact. I was so wrong to believe that. Everyone has a circle of influence, utilize it. And trust is calling for you. This is never what I wanted to do. Quite frankly, still, it's not what I want to be doing. It's not natural for me to get up and speak in front of people. My public speaking course in college, my face turned the color of a tomato. I never took a government course at any point. Never had to. Not in high school, not in college. I knew nothing about our government. Knew we had 3 branches. Didn't know what they did. I still don't know what they do. I don't even think they know what they do, actually. I was in dental school after college to be a dentist. Actually, set to specialize in endodontics, which is root canals, weirdly enough. That's what I prepared for. But I was really, really wrong in assuming that that's how God works, that he calls those who are already prepared. It's not at all what he does. Actually, quite the contrary. He prepares those who he calls. And if he brings you to something, he will certainly bring you through it. So trust is calling for you. You know what this means, right? When they start to walk on stage. Like, oh gosh. I've had the podium taken from me by a man once before. I'm kidding. I really do appreciate you guys. Maybe the intention was for me to inspire you, but it is this right here, seeing you all in this state, willing to do what it takes to take your state back and in turn flip the rest of the country, these other states that are following suit. It's this right here that inspires me. So thank you guys very much.
Guys, a big round of applause for Riley Gaines.
Thank you, Riley.